All right, so last week we heard the story that the Jacksonville Jaguars were possibly planning a major stadium rebuild similar to what the Carolina Panthers and the Cleveland Browns are looking at, and it would force them to play their home games elsewhere in 2025 and 2026, and they have a potential suitor in Orlando. There are a few issues with this, but overall, I will say it does make a lot of sense. The main problem is it's about 150 miles away from Jacksonville, and the first report that we heard was that the Jaguars wanted to be as close to Jacksonville as possible, possibly even in Jacksonville, which really doesn't seem possible based on the stadiums. They have North Florida Stadium with a track around it is the biggest one with a capacity of 12,000. So it seems like if this rebuild is coming and, it takes 2 years, the Jaguars will be forced to leave Jacksonville unless they somehow pull off building some type of temporary site in the city. So you can see Orlando emerges as possible temporary home for Jaguars during the stadium renovation. Orlando is closer to hosting an NFL team than ever before. That is the recent rumor. A potential suitor has emerged in the growing discussion regarding where the Jaguars could relocate ahead of the start of extensive renovations to their home stadium beginning in 2025. I don't think that's been confirmed. This article is making it seem like it is confirmed, but we do expect the Jaguars with the TIAA Bank Field to get renovations. The NFL is pressuring them. I mean, that stadium is just not up to par. On Friday, Steve Hogan, the CEO of the Florida Citrus Sports, joined the conversation on possible host cities by casting Orlando as a destination with the Jags' temporary move seemingly on the horizon. Hogan oversees a nonprofit event management company that operates various events such as the Citrus Bowl from Orlando's Camping World Stadium. So this is the potential stadium that they are trying to pitch to host the Jaguars for 2 seasons. And one of the other things I was thinking, this is brutal timing. If you're a Jaguars fan, I mean, you would have loved to have seen this happen during the Urban Meyer year. Yes, send the Jaguars 150 miles away. Is Urban Meyer the worst coach in NFL history? I know he's a great college coach, but that season, I don't know if I've seen a worse season just in general based on all the stories and scandals and things like that. But either way, it did get them. I think it got them a number 1 pick that turned into be Trayvon Walker, so it wasn't even a good result. But no, the Jaguars are a young team. They're improving, and it really is not good timing. I mean, the fans just sat through 2 horrific seasons to get Trevor Lawrence, to get all these top picks. Now they're getting better, and right in the prime of Trevor Lawrence's career, we expect them to re-sign him to a super mega max contract, probably $55 million per year when it's his time. As long as he keeps progressing, he would be playing his home games in Orlando, not Jacksonville or wherever. I've also heard Tallahassee, maybe at FSU. But the reason this makes a little bit more sense, you can take a look at the stadium. It is very hollow. It did recently receive a $200 million renovation, and they want $800 million more from tax revenue to complete their renovation. So I haven't seen new renderings, but $800 million is going to completely change the look of this stadium. Right now, I believe it's got a capacity of about 65,000, which for an NFL temporary home is more than plenty. And it really, this stadium kind of just sits there. It's not, look at the teams it's hosted. Look at its home teams. It's known for the Citrus Bowl, but then there's all these different, XFL, MLS, UFL, UFO, AOW. It's just, what is all this crap? It did host WrestleMania back a little bit ago, in 2017. That was its biggest crowd on record. And its recent renovation in 2014, again, it was around $200 million, where they completely redid the stadium and reshaped the entire thing. I would say this stadium looks like maybe a little bit of a worse version of Raymond James Stadium, or maybe like a newer version of Nissan Stadium, which is not good. It's just very bland. But, as a temporary home, I guess I can kind of see it. So maybe this ends up happening. The only drawback is it is pretty far away from Jacksonville, and if they do want to stay close to home, that's going to be an issue. It says Orlando is located roughly 140 miles from Jacksonville, and it may end up on the future list of host cities, although it may take some time for the Jaguars to settle on a temporary home. In addition to impacting the Jaguars, the TIAA Bank Field renovations are expected to affect the future Georgia-Florida rivalry, which also takes place in the stadium. And I would expect Georgia and Florida to go to a home-and-home format while TIAA Bank Field or stadium gets renovated. That just seems like the most logical sense, especially if it's a 2-year thing. 1 year the game could be in Athens, the next year the game could be in the Swamp. Very obvious solution to that, but we'll have to see if Orlando, they made their pitch for an MLB team. Now they're trying to jump in on the NFL. This would be a little bit different though, but they would more than likely see some really good football and probably a pretty good Jacksonville team, at least a pretty competitive team, as long as the Jaguars are able to sign Trevor Lawrence to a long-term contract. So we will see what happens with that. And then I did see a recent report on the Cleveland Browns situation saying that the Browns just need to bite the bullet and build a new stadium. Yeah, the Browns thing is really weird to me. Like, before their announcement on that $1 billion rebuild, I originally had thought that they would just build a new stadium. I mean, if it's going to cost $1 billion, why not just go all in if you're Haslam, fork over a little bit of money, and instead of extending this stadium's life cycle by 20 years, build a brand new domed stadium that's going to last you 45 years, that you're going to have massive events in. And, Cleveland becomes kind of a destination for Final Fours, for the Super Bowl. I'm sure the Super Bowl would be more than open to, once out of every 5 years going to a cold weather place, as long as you build a good enough stadium. We saw it with Minneapolis. They hosted the Super Bowl 2 years after they threw up that super stadium. So the whole Browns thing is kind of weird. And then I thought, it's just because of the land. They have no place to build it. But now if they're doing this rebuild, they'll already be leaving Cleveland for 2 years. And kind of the common thought with the Browns is maybe they'll play at where the Hall of Fame game is in Canton, Ohio. I really can't see any other option for the Browns that's near Cleveland. There was also the idea maybe they play at Ohio Stadium. I highly doubt that. I think it's much more likely if they were to leave Cleveland and go like an hour away, it would be Canton, Ohio, and it would be like a situation like the Chargers were in, where they played at a very small, reduced capacity stadium. We've seen the NFL allow teams to do that. That was because the Chargers were waiting for SoFi. This would be the Browns waiting for their new stadium. But I do think this option for the Jaguars, this Camping World Stadium, it's just this neutral site thing that hosts teams, so it kind of seems perfect. The only issue is it is pretty far away from Jacksonville, and those are going to be very competitive years for the Jaguars, so it is rather unfortunate for them. But that is kind of the situation on both the Browns and the Jaguars. Both teams possibly playing at temporary homes for 2 years in 2025 and 2026. We have not heard of the Carolina Panthers timeline, but they're also thinking about a rebuild as well. Maybe they would be playing elsewhere in 2020. I mean, we could get 3 teams playing elsewhere legitimately. I'm guessing the NFL would not want that. That'd be very strange, but maybe Carolina does it down the road, because it seems more than likely about that. And then I did see the recent update on the Commanders situation now that they have the new ownership. It seems like the first big step for the new owner is getting the new stadium. Is it going to be back in D.C.? Is it going to be in Landover? They had originally rumored to have wanted a $3 billion Superdome that changed colors and was translucent, being the only, color-changing roof in the NFL that goes all the way around. But I don't know if those plans are scrapped. There were also renderings that made it look like the Superdome in New Orleans, so we'll have to see what happens with the Commanders, but I am expecting them to eventually build their super stadium, probably break ground by 2027 actually probably break ground by 2025. They are desperately need a new stadium. Everyone agrees the worst stadium in the NFL is FedEx Field, and they're not going to dump money into renovating it because it's useless. There's no reason to. You're dumping money in something that's probably going to be demolished in 3 years when they end up moving. So they're going to want to move fast on the new stadium, and we could hear things in the next few months. The only reason there really hasn't been any discussion surrounding the Commanders' new stadium is because of the ownership situation. Now that that seems to be squared away, we should get some clarity on what the Commanders plan to do. Is it going to be a dome? Is it going to be in Landover? Is it going to be in Northern Virginia, or is it going to be back in the D.C. area? I'm guessing it's going to be in Northern Virginia, but that was kind of Dan Snyder's plan, so maybe that's changed. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.